I could not be fully convinced, still believing that the whole experience was generated from my unconscious mind. Whenever I conducted the experience further, the sound recordings declared unusually different wisdom. They were unusual because I had no knowledge of the information shared, for I knew I had never been interested in knowing, nor had any cause to know the subjects under observation, nor did I have the need to study them from books borrowed at the time. Our unconscious minds are capable of absorbing information in brief seconds and storing it, while we are unaware. When there is need for that wisdom to be made known, it will be made available. One wonders what else we are going to discover about our fantastic mind. If the experience was a pre-recorded genetic element, it would also make sense if we accepted the continuity of life through the ages of being born again several times in the past. Are we perhaps recycled continually throughout eternity? Throughout the years, I became aware of other sensitives and learned a little about their mediumistic activities with alleged higher intelligences. Although not fully convinced, I still wonder if what I have experimented on my own self could be compared with their experiences. Some of those people have written books about their activities with the other side, and when one open-mindedly reads their literature, one discovers well-defined logic in them. This is one of the reasons why I was interested in recording everything and analyzing what is transferred. If we could become aware of a verifiable source, we could truly rejoice. Merva began asking me to take over her group, as she felt very tired and believed that I was heaven-sent. Obviously, what she had started was helping people adhering to the group, and they were feeling good about the experience, even finding some consolation for their possible personal traumas. But I was not interested in taking over. I felt the need to explain myself fully, while Merva and the others showed the utmost respect towards me. I preferred to encourage them to discover their hidden talents and use their own imagination in finding their real selves in the real world, thus becoming happier and healthier individuals. This could be considered a great achievement without trying to change anybody, but rather helping them to help themselves to a healthier life. Nevertheless, I could not lead people into believing in what I could not fully understand or believe. Since I would never put myself on a pedestal to be worshipped, as mentioned, I made a suggestion to them to accept me as a special friend from afar, willing to share some of the treasures he found whilst walking his pathway. It meant telling them things about my discoveries, but I was unwilling to tell them about it being an experiment for now, and yet, if they so chose, they could consider it as being one. When my discovery is discovered to be helping them feel better, encouraging them to make but positive changes to their thinking, and therefore enjoy their lives, their friendships, their families, and the world that surrounds them, the numbers of people frequenting those get-togethers increased. I never enjoy bragging about myself, however, my talks became more enjoyable and fun than before. Some even kept suggesting that I should write books on these subjects for future reference. I continued to attend the gatherings for those who were willing to listen and discover. I was the most rejected of my ex-wife, her witness associates, and my alleged children. Yet I was a truly accepted and treasured friend for others. One's trash became others' treasure. Several of the guests regularly attending my talks either directly or indirectly suggested that Merva should step down from her throne. But it would be very unfair, for she had started that group initially, after being rejected from another spiritual development group due to her own reasons, or being somewhat different with her opinions, which I was not familiar with and did not wish to know. It was interesting to see how I was originally involved with Merva's group, after being introduced to them by members of the WAUFOIC research group, who were keen to know the real truth about UFOs, alien visitors from other places, and their individual experiences. They all claimed to have discovered some form of communication through those channeling sessions at Merva's group. Some of them were so convinced that they were literally conversing with other intelligences from afar. Allegedly, after such gatherings and communication with others from galactic space via Merva's mediumship, they had either seen unidentified lights in Perth's skies or encountered them while driving. It was going to be an extraordinary experiment on my part. Some were very critical of Merva, believing she was engaged in black art. It was extremely judgmental, as I did not discover anything like that, even after my not-so-obvious psychoanalysis of her. On the other hand, some declared that they sensed something almost Christ-like about me, perhaps due to being gentle with everyone, but not in extremes. I prefer to be kind to everyone, for I always like to see people smile and be happy, although I have often been laughed at or criticized for being me by a group of automatons enslaved to a cult. Ironically, some of my experiments and behavior were taken by a few, for instance my ex-partner and her associates, as being opposite to what I stood for. Everything unusual and unexplainable was considered by them as something to be feared, therefore dark and sinister. I did not dare mention anything to any of them, for they preferred not to listen to worthless chatter, as they put it, and if I attempted to quote from Magda's favorite book, the Bible, she always snapped at me, saying, "How dare you speak of God's word? You are a devil worshipper." She certainly represented her spiritual brothers and sisters in the minutest detail. They chose to believe that they knew all about the truth, but closed their minds completely. No, I was never a devil worshipper, nor believed in the existence of their God. On the other hand, there was so much more to be known about real human beings and their wonderful minds. Remember, Jehovah's Witnesses are exactly what they believe themselves to be, not necessarily belonging to the human race. Speaking of Jehovah's Witnesses, after many years of associating with them, I can easily say without any prejudice and through systematic observation that there exists persistent evidence of their limited thought processes and teachings. They regard supposed spirit communication and related activities, such as being inspired, sinful after alleged biblical advice, and therefore witness elders consider their minds remaining pure. But the reality is different. They do not allow progressive thinking, therefore education of any kind outside their convictions is seen as a great sin against their God. Thus my desperate need to question them about what is really contained within their minds. We discover that the witnesses are always one-track minded in regard to all scientific research and discoveries. New Age and spiritual thinking and communication as possession by demons who apparently worship Satan, the devil. They never entertain the idea of spirit communication because, as far as they are concerned, all spirits are demons who channel everything evil to their audiences. We need to ask them to explain that if the Bible is inspired or channeled from God and his angels, could it not also be considered as dependent on demonic activity if all spirit communication is demonic and we should avoid it? Jehovah's Witnesses progressively close their minds by never allowing any form of education for fear of being guided by the demons. All progressive thought, inventiveness, and imagination are regarded in the same light. This is the most fanatical and superstitious characteristic of the witnesses, which is made manifest in their lifestyle. Their children are inflicted with the same darkness from a very young age, rendering them unwilling to educate themselves, only remaining within the limited wisdom and teachings of uninspired men, who they adore as if they are the spokesman of God Almighty, thus replacing Jesus, the Redeemer. I will cautiously declare that the witnesses live only in fear, because they let the real demons play with their minds, thereby stopping all inspiration and keeping them in darkness. This is the utmost evil. The witnesses are victims of this ill, and the blood of every single witness is in the hands of a bunch of uninspired men of their governing body. Every single individual witness is sacrificed by their dedication to a non-existent goal, for God Jehovah cannot be the one who stops them from progressing in education and wisdom. God does not lead anyone into darkness, no matter how they may try to prove this thought to be wrong. Perhaps the witness elders and teachers should start thinking. I will again emphasize that anything which leads to darkness is evil and cannot be from God. The devil and his demons are the ones inflicting them with fear of discovery and progressive thinking by setting various scenarios for them to avoid education. They are so hypnotized that when they see the fruit of knowledge, they are immediately conditioned to run away from it. As long as they are kept in the dark, they can never be free and are easily controlled by the demons inspiring their governing body. Therefore, Jehovah's Witnesses are like children running around the mulberry bush, repeatedly doing the same things, never permitting themselves to think. They seem to be happy in the belief that they are doing fine. It is time to wake up. I often ask myself this question in regard to Christ, walking again amongst men. Would they truly recognize and follow him, or would they reject him as an odd and an evil person? Let us be honest with ourselves. When you meet a man who speaks a different language to yours, or better still, a man who is heavily accented, how would you react? Your very first impressions of him would most likely be that he is not cognizant about the sophisticated lifestyle you lead, perhaps an unintelligent and uncultured individual, not deserving your attention, for he cannot express himself as you do. Can you imagine how many talented, well-educated, and cultured people have been ignored and segregated within society? This trend can be seen everywhere around you, on every continent in the world. No matter what background, social upbringing, nationality, race or belief system people may belong to, so many of them are ever ready to condemn and even persecute anybody who is different. Thankfully, we have developed techniques to interpret foreign languages and communicate with others from all around the world. Today, by utilizing internationally spoken English, we can at least discover the existence of great minds, great arts, and inventions, and share them. But the original trend of many in rejecting one another due to lingual barriers, social standing, race or religion still remains. When people can overcome their differences and accept one another, they can amicably communicate, and by doing so, they may start understanding each other. If you belong to a certain religious ideal, believing in a supreme deity, you are very likely to ask the question about why a great God, the creator of everything, confused the language of people in the first place so that they could not continue with their endeavors. Remember, the Bible declares that God, being so absolutely perfect, could only have created his prime creation, man, perfectly. Perfect humans cannot therefore do imperfect things, and somehow anger their God. Anger, jealousies, and separations cannot belong to the characteristics of a perfect God. Therefore, we are urged to think again why Christ advised his followers to love all others, no matter what their background or status. Why do you think that the Hebrew nation, God's first chosen, emphasize honoring oneself and one's parents, unity and brotherly love? Why is Islam said to preach peace? Maybe there is a different explanation for this. I believe almost all man's religions and belief systems contain gems everybody can benefit from. The idea we are better than the other should be replaced with we can work together and make our world a better place for all. However, as long as cults, like the witnesses amongst others, believe they are perfect like their God exist with their despicable attitudes towards humanity, the entire world can only regress, not advance into a beautiful future. I prefer peace, love, and understanding, not separations and hurt to others, because I do not belong to or support the characteristics of Jehovah's Witnesses and the like. I am also one of the completely and wrongly judged people in the world. Why? It is because I am different. I sound different, I am slightly accented, and I'm always kind to others. I accept people as they are, and my love is unconditional. In return, I expect nothing, not any reward other than beautiful smiles on people's faces. I have never sought fame and glory or financial gain by being the way I am. There are better ways to gain fame and buying power. Honest work is one of them. Yes, I'm different. Whether I am accepted by others or not does not bother me. Others can only accept me as I am, for that is my nature. I cannot change what I am, otherwise I cannot really be me. But my ex-wife and her witness bosses tried to change me into a faithful slave, as they do with others in the name of their governing body. Remember, for every action there is a reaction. Therefore, the original Buddhist philosophy, which Jesus also promoted, has become my motto throughout the years. Do unto others as you would like it to be done unto you. Whatever one shouts at a mountain echoes back. When I undertook the study of psychology, I knew it would be a lifelong commitment. It really becomes one's lifetime companion. It has shown me the art of living positively. It is an art because it shows the beauty and realism of life if we allow it to be part of our daily existence. The art of living is getting to know ourselves. It is living in harmony with ourselves and others, and knowing that there are great possibilities in our nature. Self-awareness, acceptance, and assertion are vital concepts in this understanding. Being self-aware means understanding our emotions, aspirations, capabilities, behaviors, values, and our own minds. What we discover as being ourselves leads us to comprehend what we may have overlooked. It is not fanatical, and we do not need to think about it 24 hours a day, but it is a perfect objective towards the realization of what we have been exposed to for a very long time in our past. Through self-awareness, we discover our readiness to experience rather than discard the reality of being in the moment. We need to identify our emotions and experience them. Remember also that self-acceptance is not self-deception. Self-assertion means honoring one's personal needs, one's own assumptions, and one's own values. Success means to transform one's self into action. On the other hand, giving others' feelings priority while being aware of their needs and rights is not self-sacrifice, but objectivity. Do Jehovah's Witnesses respect this principle? Self-awareness can only start by learning to be more responsive to our own feelings, moods, and emotions, which we may have been forced to block, the same way as fanatical belief systems foster. This awareness can only be felt by observing without interfering. No matter how one feels about an experiment, an event, or anything else, when not categorized, it becomes a better experience which can be studied more objectively, for it is far better for self-healing. There are a number of psychologists and philosophers promoting this understanding. And I also believe that when we become aware of our unwanted feelings, they begin to fade. I have personally been affected by such emotions in the past, and the only way to remove them from my consciousness was to become more aware of their existence, knowing deep down that they were not worth worrying about. Here is an experiment you can try by yourself as recommended in a literature which one must read. Take a deep breath and close your eyes without paying any attention to details of your inner experience, no matter what it may be, not criticizing, without self-condemnation, and without any assumptions, and you will be surprised how it awakens some of your obscure emotions which had not been recalled for a long time. While developing our self-awareness, we become more cognizant of the fact that we know a lot more than what we think. This is why nobody should interfere with our awareness, dulling us into a deep sleep so that we can be controlled. We therefore need to be aware of the cultist dictums we may be forced to listen to. I recommend that people start their day with laughter and surround themselves with happy colors, same as those writers who have studied this issue for a long time. And their day will be happy and colorful. Experience it and discover how happy you can be. I have often spoken about the ultimate questions of life many of us are so very curious to understand. One in particular concerns everybody. Are we here just for the moment, and in the next moment in time, we simply vanish? If so, why cannot the unique expression of consciousness, which yearns to live forever and never cease existing, accept oblivion as the ultimate goal for our next destination? Why is it so that every individual is desirous to live and make it worthwhile to experience life, never wanting to worry about the ending of all things? Are we only living just to die? If so, would it not be better never to be alive and experience what living is? Do we survive the inevitable? It is perfectly normal and very natural to think this way. What about the animal kingdom? Do they feel the same way as we practical humans do? And do they also worry the same way we do when the end comes? At least in theory, animals have similar feelings and are capable of knowing when departure is imminent. In the human world, we popularly call it fear of the unknown. But how do animals score it? Are we perhaps simply primitive shells? Like with everything living, there needs to be something we know very little of and is somewhat electromagnetic in nature, which in varying degrees and formations animate living organisms according to need and environment, and every one of us, including animals, seem to tap into it. I consider it to be living in reality and being alive in the universe, although unknown to us, and certainly more than we can imagine, while physically alive. Perhaps we can make it easier for ourselves to understand if we can equate it with life force. Our minds seem to be so limited that we cannot detect its size, let alone its color. Even our brains, despite being truly magnificent in many ways, are incapable of hearing all sounds and sensing all frequencies of light, therefore rendering us unable to see beyond the dark recesses of the universe. We still have no idea how life works, and even in our wildest dreams are only scratching the surface. Could we perhaps describe life force as the real essence of being? As considered earlier, there are too many unknowns, and it would be foolish to think in terms of only black and white. I say it is better still not to hope too much of one thing or outcome, for we will eventually learn the reality of things when the time comes. Then we will know what happens to us, as with others who have gone before us, just the same as the animal kingdom. When we take Plato's wisdom into account, we need to consider this. Oftentimes it is easy to understand the dilemma of a child who is afraid of the dark. The real tragedy is when men are afraid of the light. Many seem to grope in the dark while imagining they are living in the light. Some open-mindedness could take us into the heights where we can at least sense the existence of light. Alas, throughout the centuries, religious dogma has kept almost every individual in the dark, inside a dirty little box, with a tightly closed lid on the top. Like an amoeba, which could not move in any direction, most of humanity has also been living until some spark of light, perhaps streaming from a tiny pinhole somewhere within the dark prison cell, manifests. While frequenting Merva's group, I discovered some people who desperately needed psychologically viable assistance, and not psychic endeavors, who could not witness any improvement within their personal outlook on life, even after a considerable period of attendance. That may have been due to the repeated advice given and repeated scenarios created unendingly, but perhaps there was a need for that. When people become severely depressed and suicidal, they need to seek the help of appropriate professionals, the same as when someone needs the assistance of an electrician. He or she would not ask the help of a plumber. According to known facts, the witnesses would never agree with this concept, for when it comes to certain types of medical treatment, as with psychiatric assistance, they would prefer to ask the help of their dedicated elders instead, believing they are spirit-guided. As far as my ex-wife and associates were concerned, I was guided by evil spirits. However, I believe that through my contributions in Merva's group, we were able to create variety and some color while making the audience think, assisting them to make the right choices when seeking help to overcome their dilemmas, but never attempting to stop them being interested in what they were trying to discover in those gatherings. Without making it obvious, my aim was to assist them to ask questions to find solutions to their problems and disillusions within their lives. Their happiness was important in their own personal space. In other words, there was need to encourage them to conduct their own research. Remember the wise words? Seek, and you shall find. They were undeniably content with what they were experiencing, but I felt the need to invent new ways for them to understand that any change in their lives they desired to implement had to come from within their own wonderful minds, for I could not facilitate it by myself as I might have been expected to do, and it was not part of my personal principles. In truth, I was fearful to start yet another cult, for the world was full of them. I was there as their friend, and would feel happy if they could benefit from my input, knowing I had done something good. But if it did not provide them with any benefit, and they did not want to continue with my help, that would also be perfectly all right. The group was happy to accommodate me, and I was excited, as they were keenly interested. However, some people discreetly told me that Merva might be a little disturbed about it, for she needed much attention, although I did not discover it to be the case. She was very happy to leave it all to me, but I could not accept it, for this group was initially created by her. My association could be broken at any time, as I had other interests which would eventually take me somewhere else, although they would love to keep me there. I felt that many of them were content with the experience and happy that I was not going to stop her in any way. There was a time when she suggested that we could channel to each other's guardian angels. That was going to be a challenge for anyone, especially in my case, feeling forced into a role play similar to a theatrical performance on stage. Personally, I could not promote a pretend channeling of the energies of an unfamiliar life stream or a consciousness which may or may not have existed. For her part, Merva was totally convinced that Suren's guardian angels would be able to take control of her entire physicality and speak through her. According to this understanding, apparently it would be possible for such great consciousness to use an individual's voice. The idea was certainly very fascinating, but the reality sounded different. There were no viable or scientific tests conducted in this field, as far as I knew. Besides, under normal circumstances, one tends to question the scenario where one consciousness controls another consciousness, one form of physical consciousness controlling yet another physical being. Is it really possible? Maybe we need to search into historic facts to find whether any research had been conducted and what results had been obtained before assuming anything. There are a few interesting studies being conducted on the human brain and its capabilities in regard to brainwave pattern generation, broadcast, and reception. But I prefer to leave it to the scientific community for now.